Besides perhaps the occasional missionary arrested in a foreign nation and accused, perhaps incredibly, of performing spy work. Tales that paint an intriguing portrait from the days of the Boer Wars in South Africa, with missionaries in the business trials, until even today with reports about Phyllis Sorter, held hostage in Nigeria, or even Jeffrey Woodcock, recently released from Niger. The words military intelligence may be as oxymoronic as two apparently inopposite ideas, religion and intelligence. On just about any student who has graduated from high school and perhaps been exposed to an introductory course in college as a freshman can readily and with great facility, Manicum Chilitate, snap off the phrase opiate of the masses, flowing trippingly from the tongue, if only from rote memorization attained in cramming for a comprehensive final exam, granting no exceptions. And shedding away religion over the years has become somewhat of a rite of passage for those with sufficient educational attainments, a line of demarcation. Having once spoken as a child and thought as a child, becoming a man, separating the intelligentsia from the general masses in the proletariat, Franfran's most wretched of the earth, or the huddled masses, tired and poor, yearning to breathe free, a poetic phrase often associated with Ezra Pound. And indeed, even before we had been hit with a virus, which had witnesses amongst nuns, persons professing no religious affiliation, surpassing, despite over 318,000 Christian churches formerly in America, even the Roman Catholics, as the reach of Christianity had declined by 6 points, with 1/5 of their churches closing forever. Pew Research Center had reported a sharp decline of 12% in the year before, double their losses during the COVID-19 pandemic for Christianity, not apparently mitigated in any way by record-breaking Bible sales. Reports of some 24% of atheists turning to prayer at the beginning, after the outbreak of a novel virus, perhaps tracking the wrong metrics and building their hopes on things not so eternal. And so, post-pandemic, is America now even smarter than before, having an opportunity under sufficient evolutionary pressure to follow the science, more intelligent, now abandoning their former beliefs associated with those primitive and ancient religions? The answer to that great existential question may well depend upon exactly who you ask. In former times, the evangelical missionary question had been, have you made your decision for Christ? Can I get a witness? Can I get an amen? And post-pandemic and its evolving science, the question is, did you make your decision for science? Did you keep up with reading? Did you do the homework? Did you do the math? It's in the book guide. But even Dr. Anthony Fauci had noted how this virus had pulled us closer by before, reminding us about the great and recent marvels of Perseverance rover landing on Mars, stunning images of our dreams that are now a reality. Yet another remarkable example of the extraordinary American ingenuity, commitment, and belief in science and one another. Upon the somber occasion marking the first anniversary of a pandemic declaration, the President had prepared us to meet that moment and had many of us now prepared to be astounded and amazed by an American rescue plan. An important, even if macabre, milestone during a time during which we had all lost something, even though it may have been quite different for everyone. But now, with the warp speed arrival of new vaccines pioneering usages of products never used as vaccines before, against a novel virus that had origins still as yet unknown, and a promise to pump up production and distribution efforts, setting a course for a promise by Independence Day to be able to return once again to normal. The president, speaking from the Great Hall in the White House, gave the American people hope, assuring we know what we need to do to beat this virus. Tell the truth. Follow the scientists and the science. Because finding the light in the darkness is a very American thing to do. In fact, it may be the most American thing we do. And very few times in that address did he even mention a need to pray for a way out of that darkness, or for Godspeed on that journey. And yet, surpassing even the length of the Spanish flu pandemic almost a century before, which had run unabated for only 2 years without development of any vaccine or any pharmacological intervention. The pandemic emergency for COVID-19 was not terminated until May 2023, while even former acting CIA Director Mike Morrell had told CBS News as early as May 2020 COVID-19 would be with us for some time, perhaps only 18 to 24 months, which had been the opinion then of many medical experts, barring a breakthrough with either a vaccine or an antiviral. 18 to 24 months, just 2 years. How did our intelligence miss that? Kill one and scare 1,000. His very first pillar of terror, according to the ancient military strategist Sun Tzu. And according to the Data Institute of the University of San Francisco, pandemics, which actually have occurred every 20 years since the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918, albeit not quite with the same publicity and promotion in the media as our last emergency, are historically associated with fear, confusion, and despair. People run like schoolgirls in soiled dresses. Were you following the science, quite rational, or led by your feelings and fears? Were you just that child who spake like a child and thought like a child, failing to put away childish things when you became a man? Were you caught up in a panic, failed to recall during distressing reports that viruses are the most abundant biological particles in the world, which you should have learned by completion of grammar school, at least a good grammar school? And if you followed the science, as you say, you would know, at least by now, under sufficient evolutionary pressure, that this had been the very first pandemic ever caused by a coronavirus. Only the 7th human coronavirus known to man, and only the 220th virus from the most abundant biological particles in the world, like looking up in space at the many stars, to present a threat to mankind. But you believe. Yet, there is life, intelligent life out there. Still not exactly an avalanche waiting to engulf us all, nor quite the single biggest threat to mankind, unless you expect first contact to occur next week, or Jesus to return, despite what you might have heard while watching science fiction movies. Do the math. Those who forget their history are doomed to repeat it, said George Santayana in his work, The Life of Reason. All war is based upon deception, said Sun Tzu. And biological warfare is the oldest weapon of mass destruction, more properly termed as a weapon of terror, dating as far back in recorded history to the Assyrians in the 4th century BC, according to the Encyclopedia Britannica, as the goal of war and land battle is not mass casualties and destruction, as you may have seen in special effects in action movies, but rather merely to defeat your adversary's will to resist, not his body, but his mind and his spirit. And perhaps pitted against an invisible enemy, you, my friend, had defaulted to a flight, not a fight response. Fixated upon your delicate sensibilities and mere feelings, not focused upon the operative facts. According to former Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, you can't win a war without the right information. And intelligence, not hope or dreams, or even prayers nor faith, drives the mission cycle, at least in the profession of arms and in the military, where neither the medical officer nor the chaplain or even the JAG officer is considered a part of the primary staff, not even invited to the briefing of an operations order. Neurological function check, hero. Who won the game? In a lethal pandemic, during which a virus, a mere single strand of RNA wrapped in a crowned sheath with zero sentient capability, had managed quite effortlessly to surpass Adolf Hitler and his army in the Third Reich in half the time, were you following the official guidance? Federal public health officials, my empirically minded friend, had merely stated that the virus is thought to spread, mainly from person to person, between people who are in close contact with one another within about 6 feet through respiratory droplets produced with an infected person coughs, sneezes, or talks. Thought that these droplets can land in mouths or noses of people who are nearby, or possibly be inhaled into the lungs, and thought that COVID-19 may be spread by people who are not showing symptoms. Who thought? They did not say, leaving that suggestion, of course, to your individual interpretation. And you look like an intelligent person faced with the evolutionary pressure of a lethal pandemic. In Jacobson v. Massachusetts, a smallpox vaccine case from 1905 involving some ignorant immigrant parson who had refused a vaccine in Cambridge, the location of Harvard, and oft relied upon during our last declared public health emergency, had taken judicial notice of the fact that this is the common belief of the people of the state, and with this fact as a foundation, had held that the statute in question is a health law enacted in a reasonable and proper exercise of the police power. Lock him up. We the people who had never studied infectious disease and avoided science like the plague in high school and college. But that's what elections are for, said Dr. Ralph Northam, MD, a former Army surgeon, and the only physician serving as a state governor during the last pandemic. Do you seek second opinions, or simply and obediently follow orders like the masses? Ignorance of the law is no excuse, while all war is simply an extension of policy by other means. An emergency use authorization can only be issued to address a biological agent presenting a heightened risk of attack against military forces. Did you join the Army? Had you heard immunity deafened to the sound of Defense and Defense Production Act? Data-driven, we must presume that you are aware that by November 2021, even the CDC had identified the novel virus as a chimeric virus, which can only find origin in a lab by definition when they added it to the select list of toxins and agents. Or did you not find yourself on the distribution for that memo and still find the origins debate unsettled? Ignorance, my friend, is no excuse for the law, and you look like an intelligent person. This message was approved by Major Mike Webb. Honest.